much for joining us for our office hours. My name is Kayla Slinsky. I am head of school at Macbeth Academy, www.macbethacademy.org. And today we have a wonderful guest, Mary Poston. She is an early education expert, one of the best teachers I've ever met, really.
Aww.
And that's true. And and you are a consultant. You work with InferCabulary, a wonderful program. And what we're talking about today is how to teach vocabulary. I hear that all the time. A lot of parents ask, how do I teach vocabulary? A lot of teachers kind of don't really know how to do it in an effective, empowering way, because that's what we focus on. So kind of let's have at it. So I know yeah, let's do it.
Excited.
Yes, me too. So Mary, so when you first think about how to teach vocabulary, I know that there's two pockets, right? Two categories: how to teach naturally, what we're already doing, and then how to teach intentionally. So if I'm a mom, I don't know anything about vocabulary teaching. Where do I start?
Parents, we're trying our hardest, and you probably are already doing it in so many ways, and you don't even realize it.
Yeah.
So that's the exciting part.
Exactly. So one of the first things that I know, and I wrote a little bit few notes, is reading, because a lot of parents read to kids at bedtime. So talk to me a little bit more about what exactly we're already naturally doing when it comes to reading and vocabulary.
Sure. There are lots of incidental ways that we teach. So those are teach vocabulary. So those are the ways that we're teaching. We're just going about our day and we don't even realize it. So one of the big things is reading. And every single time you read with your child, to your child, if they're listening to audiobooks, they are little sponges and they are gaining that vocabulary. And the more you read, the better. The more words they hear, the better. There's so much vocabulary in books that you don't get in a typical conversation with somebody. That's so you true. Need those books because they are filled with this rich vocabulary that we just don't get when we're talking to people.
But my son is 4.5. Do I have to read him Harry Potter to get him that good vocabulary when it comes
Absolutely not. But if you're into Harry Potter and that's what gets you excited about reading aloud, that's the great thing with read alouds is that you don't have to stay on their reading level. You can go up a reading level. You can go up a few reading levels because you're reading aloud. And I would actually recommend that if you're like a chapter book, and you can start chapter books really early. Or you could keep it simple and read a picture book. You can read a book without pictures and make up your own words.
That's really fun.
That's fun.
Yeah, I actually did that with one of our younger classes, one of our first grade classes at Macbeth Academy, where the student was like an emerging reader. So it's like you look at this animal and it's like, what is it? And it was a yak, but it looks like a bear, like a bear moose. So she called it a bear moose, and it's like that. And then the actual word was a yak, but it's just kind of getting them creatively kind of learning.
And that's really cool because she's already developing that knowledge of what a yak is. So in her head, bear moose. So you could really dive into that and be like, a bear moose. And why are you saying that? What do you see about a yak? And then she's developing that knowledge.
Exactly.
So that would actually be a really cool way to jumpstart on that word.
Nice. What about diversity in terms of diversity of reading?
Diversifying their library at home. I know a lot of children will find a book and rereading, which I think we'll talk about later. But rereading a story is great.
Right.
But choosing different types of text is really important too. Cookbooks and maps, and my children, I always have a calendar in their room. Things like that. Just language all over the place.
That's cool.
Many places.
When you say rereading, what do you mean? Because some parents don't know.
Rereading, I know sometimes we're like, oh no, that book again. Like, we can't read that book again. It's actually really great for them to reread. It's a great thing. They develop a love of reading. I mean, if they're rereading the book a million times, they must love that book.
Absolutely.
And if they reread it, then they know what to expect in the book. So then they can build more knowledge about the book. Like they know what's coming next, so they can build that story structure.
Right.
So rereading is great.
Awesome. And then if for our older kids in Macbeth Academy, what we do is we have like analytical reading, or active reading. So I say that reading for pleasure isn't the same thing as reading to analyze the literature. So that kind of counts as rereading, where they read it the first time and then they go back and then they read again to like pick out words and context and themes and wonderful.
Yes, and that's where you move from that incidental that we talked about, like accidentally learning, to you have planned and you've thought it through.
Right.
You've moved into that type of learning at that point.
Absolutely.
More intentional. what we would call it, intentional.
Right. So then if we're still sticking with that, like naturally learning with things we're already doing, how do we incorporate everyday words, like big words in a normal everyday setting?
So you were one of my preschool parents.
I was.
Yeah. We say at school, or I try to tell preschool parents, use the big words.
Right.
Use the big words with your children. They love to hear the big words, and they're capable. They're curious. Baby talk, sometimes there's a place for it, but generally I say skip the baby talk and just use complex words with children. Like say I'm teaching math and we are going over, I'm teaching 3 and 4-year-olds and we are learning about shapes.
Right.
If I'm talking about a triangle, I can say the triangle has 3 corners, but then I'm also going to interchange that and I'm going to say the triangle has 3 vertices. I'm going to talk about the angles of the triangle.
Yeah.
And they love it.
Yeah.
And I point out to them, this is a big word.
Yeah.
And they're like, oh, we're so excited.
Well, I think my son used the word vertices. He's like 3 and a half. Yes, I have 3 vertices, mommy. I was like,
they're so proud.
They're proud, but the idea that he has a concept of a vertice, vertices when he's 3, and then he can build off of that knowledge as he gets older. So when he gets to 4th, 5th grade, it's not, it's like, I know that.
That's what I tell parents. I'm like, they may not get it that day. Or that year, but then the next year, and they hear it again, and they hear it again, and that is really what building vocabulary is. When you come across a word the first time, you're not going to get that deep understanding, but every single time you hear it, it builds and builds and builds. So that's the important part of reading too, is that the more you read and the more books you read and the more avid reader you are, the more words you are exposed to.
Yeah, it's all about exposure. And you can see the word in different contexts too. So you see one word, escape, and you see another word, different context. But it's like, I remember that word from another book. So it's just over and over and over, the repetition as well.
Exactly. Yes.
What about building that background knowledge? How do we do that? How are we already doing that naturally as parents?
Taking them places, talking to them, cooking, baking, going to the grocery store, all the things you do. I would say sometimes though we get caught in the monotony of things, and so we're just going through our daily routine, and sometimes we lose sight of talking it out. Even just talking out loud, thinking out loud with your child, going through the grocery store instead of kind of like mindlessly putting things in. Look at that. Point out a different vegetable maybe that you normally don't buy, but you're walking by in the grocery store, and you show them and you tell them the name and you talk about the color, things like that.
But then we kind of get into, is that intentional, or is that something that we're already naturally doing? So for instance,
some people are more natural doing it, and
Right.
some people would have to maybe be more intentional, and it also depends on the day.
That's true.
It depends on the day.
So tired. I think the idea is that we can separate it into incidental, natural, but you wake up and you don't have a lesson plan for your day, especially during COVID. Like a lot of who we're talking to right now are parents who are teachers, or teachers who are parents, so that we're constantly teaching.
Yes.
So
I say, there are some people that say intentionally teaching is more effective. Incidental teaching is effective. I think that they're a perfect couple.
Same.
They go together.
Yeah, and I think that once parents and teachers realize that it's constantly happening, then that's also really empowering, and it's not so defeating. Like, yes, you're already doing the things. You're not doing a bad parent. You're already doing it.
Listen, if your child has books at home, and they touch them, and they look at them, even if they're not reading them, and they're just looking at the pages, and they're doing it.
Yeah. Well, then it kind of goes into incorporating play in vocabulary too, because we have we have a home classroom. And we have our little library there, but we have, playtime, and they can just kind of wander over to the books. And then we have little stamps with little letters on it, but it's just incorporating the literacy into kind of the playing. And
you don't even have to plan it. There are some researchers that say playing is just as effective as your best practice shared reading time.
Wow.
Yeah. Play is so powerful. I think that if we just let the children play, I really think almost everything would just take care of itself.
Ooh, that's a big thing. It's a big thing.
It's a huge statement.
Yeah. But why? Why do you think it's so empowering for these kids to just play, freeing for them to just play?
Oh my goodness. It engages every I mean, aside from vocabulary, it engages every one of their senses.
Right.
It is so stimulating for them mentally, so healthy for them mentally. And let me tell you something, you can't learn a thing unless you feel good. Like, the better they feel and the more comfortable they feel and the healthier they feel,
I agree.
the more they'll learn, period.
Absolutely.
But in play, they're talking, they're imagining, they're taking all of those little things that's around them, and they are putting them into action when they play.
That's amazing. And then I'm thinking, because we talked about this outside of this conversation at Macbeth Academy, we incorporate brain breaks where it's like, it has nothing to do with, sometimes it does, but it's like, okay, we've been working, we work up to, especially in the lower grades. And then they're like, all right, we're going to do 20 jumping jacks.
Yes.
So like music, or we're going to just have like a robot challenge, or we're going to do like a quiz. If it's multiple kids, they'll do like a Kahoot quiz. But it just takes their minds off of, and they're having fun. And even the class itself, there's gamification like elements in there where they're playing games. But you're exactly right. If they don't feel comfortable and safe and
nothing's happening.
No. And you remember, like, I remember math classes or sociology where I'm just like so stressed and tense, versus like Spanish classes, they're just art, sculpture. It's just a different feel, like a body feel.
It is. When you're stressed, you're thinking about the stress.
Oh.
And when you're tired, you're thinking about being tired. One thing that I do for a brain break is yoga.
Yes.
So today we were learning C, and the C says K. So we did the cobra pose. And so
yes,
I engaged them in a vocabulary conversation there, because I said, we're going to do the cobra pose. Have you ever heard of a cobra?
Yeah.
Oh, it's a type of snake. So we're going to make our body like a snake. So now they have that in their mind, cobra, snake. And they've even made their body like a snake.
Wow, that's awesome. And I was, for one of our brain breaks at Macbeth, what we did for our younger kids is we kind of make their bodies into the letter as well. So like a Y. Cool. Cute. So when we've done the natural, and I'm sure we can keep going on and on and on.
Oh,
the idea with natural is you're already doing stuff that's already engaging and empowering. Yes. So just kind of be mindful of what you're already doing and up it if you want, but just know that there's already the baseline. So now we get into, I
would just say the takeaway with the incidental learning is reading. I mean, even if you get in 5 minutes a day.
Yeah.
5 minutes, just get it in, consistent every day. Oh, and sustained silent reading. Remember SSR in school?
Yeah.
Or drop everything and read, and you just had that quiet reading time. That's great too.
Yeah, we do that. We do that just aside from Macbeth at home. We just have a quiet reading time. My baby has my 4-year-old has a bookshelf in his room. It's nap time. It's quiet time. And he's just reading his little books. But I was going to actually, and maybe this isn't the best thing to say, but we were talking about screen time. And a lot of parents are like, my kids don't watch television. Or I'm like, oh yeah, mine don't either. But when they do, if they do, we have the subtitles on. And my son learned how to read when he was like, really, because he was your preschool class.
It was the wildest thing I had never seen, and I still have never seen anything like it.
Well, we're just very literate, but what we do is we put the subtitles on, and he's reading while he's watching. So he's just constantly reading. And he says, Mommy, can you turn the words on?
That's really smart. And especially like in the age we're in now and all the things happening now, I just think that there's a place for multimedia. There is.
Absolutely.
I just think it's being mindful and actually planning it and being mindful about it. I think that it's really great. And speaking of background knowledge, I try to think of something like if they see the word pyramid and you're trying to teach the word pyramid.
Right. Out of context.
I can't go to Egypt. We can't do that.
Right.
So let's pull up a picture of Egypt. Let's go to the computer or another resource and let's find that there.
Yeah. Well, the nice thing is we live in the 21st century. So the idea is that there's so much around when it comes to multimedia. So even more, pyramid, right? Okay. So let's watch a video on ancient Egypt. Let's go to, if there's like an outdoor, like a museum or something, like some kind of exhibit, maybe we can have some kind of a tactile learning. That's what we do a lot in our social studies classes, is like very hands-on tactile learning. Maybe you could like make the papyrus, right, out of that. Yes. Like
my daughter was just learning about that in school. And she was asking me about it. I'm like, well, we can do that. We can make paper.
Exactly. We can make paper. Yes. Absolutely. We can make paper, but it's very much hands-on. Like,
Yes.
It's, I feel like then if we think about like incidental learning versus intentional, passive, things you don't have to plan versus active. So there are so many resources, especially multimedia with videos and music and hands-on activities that you can do with your child that are high. That's all we care about is empowerment and engagement at Macbeth Academy, and especially InferCabulary. We're going to see a little demo of it too. I'm excited.
Yeah.
So now let's talk about what can parents do, like in terms of planning. Doesn't have to be that much planning, even teachers as well, around vocabulary. How can we?
It doesn't have to be difficult. What I think of when I'm planning, I think of especially vocabulary. What am I going to do before we read? What
Yes.
am I going to do while we're reading? And what am I going to do after to reinforce everything? And kind of make it that tactile, hands-on, give it that element. So I brought a book.
Yay!
It's a really pretty book. Let's see, who wrote this? Lola Schaefer. It's called One Busy Day.
Oh, we have that.
So pretty. But it's about, it's a book for brothers and sisters. I recommend it. But anyway, before I would read this book, and if I were being very intentional about my teaching,
right,
I would flip through it and look for a word, and we call these tier 2 words. So tier 1 words are words that are pretty basic. Tier 2 are the words that come up kind of often, but you see them more like in books and not so much in conversation as much. Tier 3, they're like your nonfiction, like crazy vocabulary that is pretty specific to that situation. Right. So I would look for maybe a tier 2 word, and I found one. Nice. And it's on this page, and it says she explored.
Right.
Well, I might go, I don't know if my child knows what explore means, or if they have learned it, I don't know if they really have a deep understanding of the word. So I might pick out the word explore. So before we read, you might look and see what's happening on the cover. We always talk about the cover. What is going on? Oh my gosh, they look like they're having so much fun, and they look happy. What's another word for happy?
Right. Or what do you notice? Like if you're looking, what do you notice? Like what's normal? What's out of the ordinary? What can you guess is going on there? Yeah. Is that a dragon? Like why would there be a dragon?
Yeah.
Right.
And I might say, it looks like they might explore in this story. What do you think explore means? Have you ever heard that word? And at preschool, we talk about language can also be, we can use our hands for language. There's something called sign language. So
yes,
yeah.
Absolutely.
So,
yes.
So I might say, they know if I ask them a question and they can either do this or they can do this.
Brilliant.
So, yes, no. So I might say, have you ever heard of the word explore? And you might see some of them doing this and this. So I'm going to be looking for this. And I say, oh, it looks like I saw you said, yes, you've heard explore. Where have you heard that?
Right.
And they'll give me an example. And I say, oh, okay, well, when we're reading, we're going to listen for that word. And then we're going to see if that goes with that example. So we read the story.
As a teacher or a parent, I don't need to know all of sign language in order to communicate using sign language.
So far, we're into 3 words. That's it.
Brilliant. And it's so effective.
Yes, no, and thank you.
Brilliant.
So effective, and they love it.
Yeah.
Sometimes if you get too willy-nilly crazy, then they get overwhelmed, and you don't have the buy-in because they're like, this is too hard.
Absolutely.
So anyway, so then we get to the page of the story when we're reading, and I get to, she explored.
Right.
What is she doing? Have you ever done that? So you're kind of doing like that text to self. If they make a connection with the word, you've got them.
Yeah.
They're like, absolutely. I've done that before. I've explored. I've done it.
Word. Just you make the vocabulary personal.
Yes. And that's called text to self.
Text to self.
Yes. Make it personal. And once it's personal, everyone loves when it's personal to them and they can relate to it.
Absolutely.
You're going to remember it. Oh, you've explored? When's the time that you've explored? And they tell you about the time.
But that's not just for preschool kids. Like if we're talking about SATs, ACTs with the vocabulary, if you can make it personal, the word personal to the child, then you've got them. They don't have to memorize. As we teach. I mean, at Macbeth Academy, we do teach Latin, like Latin, great, like for 1, 2, 3, and 4, just to help them with the roots. But if the child knows, I have that experience with this word, had a dilemma. What was the example of dilemma? Make it personal.
Yes.
Text to self. Yes. Brilliant.
And so then you'll talk about the times they've explored. And then you'll finish reading the story. So an after reading strategy might be, where would you like to explore? We explore something today, and then you actively explore.
Wow.
And you do all the things.
That's brilliant. So that doesn't take a lot of prep. Like you just kind of pick the word. Yeah.
Just pick one word. We flipped through, picked one word. And then they might love the story and read it again. And the next time, you could focus on a vocabulary word, or you might pick a different reading concept that you want to work on. But that's where rereading is great.
That's awesome. That's awesome.
And you're more familiar with the book, because how many times have you picked up a book and been like, I don't know this book. We haven't read this book yet. How many times have you sat down and read the book through,
So many times. And then the idea is like the child is going to know the book by heart. So they're teaching you, I know that word, explored, and here's when you use it, and here's another time. And I remember this from another book too. That's the power of reading with the vocabulary.
Yes. And then that will come into retelling. So if they can retell the story, that's so much fun too.
Absolutely.
And sometimes we give stories different endings, and there's a whole other high level thinking skill.
Oh, you're right. Especially in like writing classes, you can totally do that. That's fun. We did that with Romeo and Juliet.
Oh, that's cool.
An alternate ending with Romeo and Juliet.
Oh, that's really cool.
Yes.
I did it the other day with Room on the Broom.
Yes.
Are you familiar with that story, Room on the Broom?
Groom on the Broom?
Yeah, it's a preschool, but at the end it's kind of sad because the dragon flies away, and I don't know, it always kind of makes me sad because he was all angry, and there's really no closure to that.
You're supposed to say spoiler alert.
Sorry, spoiler alert.
I'll just edit that and post.
Sorry.
You're so funny.
But we changed it. I said, you know what? They asked him he asked if there was room on the broom. I guess if you don't know the story, it doesn't do justice. But he asked if instead of being angry and flying away, he just asked, is there room on the broom for me? And they said yes. So give it a happy ending.
There it is. Whatever kind of ending you want. And that's nice too. That's good. All right, vocabulary. So what about? Yeah, exactly. So rereading, we've talked about that so many times. Rereading is powerful, and then using the vocabulary words in context. So now let's think about stepping away from the traditional making a lesson plan, incorporating these elements into the lesson. What are some things outside? If we step out of the four walls or the four sides of the computer screen, what can we do outside of the classroom that's more low tech to improve vocabulary? So I remember we talked about Battle of the Books and book club.
Oh, yes. Well, and that goes along with diversifying your library at home, diversifying what your children read.
Right.
It goes along with that because sometimes students or children can get stuck in that genre or that, that type of book. So what I would suggest for parents who say that is a book club.
Yeah.
Oh, and it doesn't have to be fancy. It doesn't have to be all this work for you. It could be just your child and one other child. Or you could find a book club that already exists.
Absolutely.
There are a million out there right now, but I know public schools have this thing called Battle of the Books.
And libraries.
Actually, the Battle of the Books is through the public. I think it's through the public libraries.
Ours is?
Organize it.
Cool. That's awesome.
So.
Yeah. And that's national, I bet. That's national, right?
Yeah, I know it's in counties all over Maryland, but I'm not sure. Yeah. And that's how my daughter got into, she realized that she loved historical fiction. It was through Battle of the Books. She would have never touched those books, but
that's brilliant. Okay, so Battle of the Books. What else can we do that's more low tech? What we do at our school at Macbeth Academy is we have, for instance, like a social studies day, or like a nature, like if we're doing science, doing like a botany lesson, we're learning the things in the book, and then we kind of go into nature. Like here's what you're learning, and then you close the computer, and then you go out. So where all of our students are, there's some kind of access to the outside. So one of our lessons is to go to a natural, like a nature reserve and observe, or have a scavenger hunt, or have your science notebook and take notes on what you observe.
Yeah, again, connecting.
Absolutely.
Having the experience.
Absolutely, because it makes it more real. If you were like, for instance, my son, he's 1.5, and the first time, so we were talking about animals, and the first time he saw a zebra was at the zoo. So he knows this. He's connecting zebra, right? Or we went to his local farm, and the first time he saw a goat, were understood what the concept was at the farm. He's looking at a
Right.
goat. So so these words are real things.
Yes.
So the children can learn.
And
in a
he's
very
making
meaningful way.
connections.
Absolutely.
He's
It's so young.
connecting that a zebra is at a zoo and a goat is at a farm.
Right. Exactly. There's just so many
Beth
possibilities.
Lawrence, the founder of InferCabulary.
Yes.
She loves to use the example of, say, when a child is little and say they have their first concept of, what does she use? I think it's maybe a cow. And she knows a cow has, and I'm maybe getting this completely wrong, but it's along these lines. It makes sense. So a cow. So they know a cow has 4 legs, a cow has hair, it's an animal,
Right.
they know a cow. But then the first time they see a dog, they call the dog a cow. Because they haven't developed that complete understanding of the word yet.
Right.
But every time they're exposed, oh wait, that's a cow.
Right.
Every time they're exposed, they learn more about the word.
Yeah. So my baby calls tigers. He calls tigers zebras too. Or he saw like the great, and it's got stripes. He goes zebra.
Yeah.
Because he sees that's got lines. So he doesn't know the word for stripes. He's like, zebras have those. So he's making those kind of.
The exposures. I remember when I taught preschool in college.
Wow.
I had a little boy and he saw a picture, or he saw a helicopter.
Right.
And he pointed to the sky. He said, airplane. And I said, no, it's a helicopter.
Yeah.
And he just was adamant, airplane. I said, look, they both fly in the sky. So guess what we had to do? We had to pull out pictures.
Wow.
And we had to show the difference. Here's an airplane. Here's a helicopter. And we had to study them and look at the differences.
Yeah.
And then from that understanding, I know that they're both in the sky. They're both very high. They both travel. But here's the difference.
That's
in the
awesome.
Structure.
I feel like as you get older, the words have more nuance. So it's
that's the word. Yes.
Right?
Yes.
So just learning the subtle differences of meaning, but that comes, like you said, from exposure and reading and knowing different words in different contexts and using the words, but not just the child using it, but also the parents just giving them opportunities to use the words as well.
And it can be, it's a lot. There are so many words. And
there are so
all
many
the words with so many different meanings and homonyms and synonyms and using them in different contexts.
Yes. Like this is an aside, but I was working with some students that are of Chinese descent, and my family is Jamaican descent. And one of the words that came up was dumpling. And in my culture, we have dumplings, and in their culture, they have dumplings. So we were able to like pull up images.
And in my culture, we have dumplings. You call them a dumpling.
And they're all in all cultures. They're delicious. Yeah. So it's just being able to connect with the word on a cultural level for all three of us, right?
Yes.
And then understand the word, the meanings of the word. It just expands your mind, your understanding of what these words can be. It can be super empowering too. Like, wow, my experience with this word is totally different, but it's very similar. So.
And isn't it cool how it all comes back around? So now we're talking about, that's why play is awesome for vocabulary. Because if you're with a playmate and you're sharing your vocabulary and your experiences, there you go. And that's why reading all the different books, because then you get, and the different kinds of books, because in the different kinds of books, they're going to use the words differently. It all just, Brilliant. It's all like a beautiful,
isn't it?
Come together.
Yes. And that is the power of learning. That's what I love. And I know that's what you love too as an educator, is just seeing that bright light. It's like, like that feeling like, I understand.
So exciting.
Yes.
It's so exciting.
Without further ado, I'd love to see some InferCabulary.
Oh, okay. So what the exciting thing about InferCabulary, and so many times we're talking, I want to be like, InferCabulary does that, and InferCabulary does that.
Yes.
It takes all of these things and wraps it up in a bow for you. It's like all the best practices all together.
Very cool.
Do you want me to share my screen with you now?
Absolutely, yeah.
Okay, so I pulled, and I literally did it right before we got on. I looked at the book, I found the word explore. So then I went into InferCabulary.
Yes.
And I pulled up the word explore, and I'm going to show you what you would see. So InferCabulary, just to give you a little bit of background, it's a web-based tool. It makes vocabulary visual, and it was created by 2 speech-language pathologists who love their career in speech-language pathology and working with students just like we do. So I think that's cool.
That's excellent.
So I'll show you. There we go. Okay, so in InferCabulary, if a student, you wanted your child or your student to learn the word explore,
Right.
you can pick from any words. You can make a word list
Right.
from any book. We have the word extractor where you can put any text in the system, and it will pull words that we have in the system, and then the child can learn the words. Or you can just leave it alone and pick a level. And we usually recommend just one level, maybe a level above, maybe a level below.
Sure.
But when they come to a word, they will see something like this. So this was for explore.
Oh, wow.
It will give them a set of pictures, kind of using the word in different contexts. And it will give them student-friendly, child-friendly captions with each word. So when my son looked at this, it was really exciting. So he learned the word, I think it was conspicuous. Yeah. The first one that came up
How
for
old
him
is your son?
8.
Okay. He's not preschool.
He's not preschool, but
Okay.
8, conspicuous.
That's pretty good. That's pretty good.
Conspicuous came up, and you can click on the word, and it says I'm not going to do it right now. We don't want to listen to that, but you can click on the word, and it would say the word conspicuous. He could look at each of the pictures, and then from just looking at pictures, he created a definition.
That's brilliant.
He was like, I think it's something that stands out just by looking at the picture.
Wow.
Yes,
That's cool.
but yes, and then he read the captions. Now you can make it so you have to read the captions. The child has to read the captions, or you can turn off that function. So anyway, here's explore. So I would do a think aloud.
Okay.
The first few times I do it with a student, and I would look at each of the pictures and just talk about what we see. So I might, start with this one and say, oh, there's 2 men, or people. What are they doing?
Nice.
Looks like they're somewhere interesting. And here again, looks like they're in a boat. They're wide open, and just talk through each picture. And then after you talk through, you can click on the captions.
Right.
Oh, so they're going to check it out. So if you check out something, you've probably never been there before if you're really interested.
That's true. Okay.
Oh, and this one, they've never seen it, and they're going to look around. Again, they've never been there before. So if I'm exploring, I'm kind of getting the understanding that it's doing something or being somewhere you've never been before.
Excellent.
You're going to look around.
Okay. So then the child looks at all of these different things, and then they kind of figure out what the word means based on these pictures and the caption. Brilliant.
Yes, exactly. And then up here, they'll build the definition. So not only do they come up with the definition, it doesn't just give them the definition, they will then build it.
Good. That's really good.
Actively.
I've used other programs where it's just the list, and it's intense because it's a list and it's a test, and maybe you can play hangman or something fun. But I like InferCabulary because of the pictures, and they can kind of, and I saw there are points. So there's gamification there.
Yes, it's a game. And I know you're going to talk with Beth, and so Beth might come on.
Yes,
later.
She's going to be a guest, but I would also love to implement this at Macbeth Academy because brilliant. That's all we care about is active learning and deep learning. So the child is actually going to know what the word is.
Yeah, I think it aligns with what you find important too.
Absolutely. And you too. What you
find. And me too.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Good. So I think, is there any last minute notes that you wanted to add about how to teach my child vocabulary? I've gone over a lot.
I just think have fun.
Yeah, right. It's important.
Fun. If you're feeling stressed about it, I just don't think it's as meaningful. I don't know the word. I don't think it's as engaging. I think just have fun, do fun thing. If you're not feeling it that day, turn on an audiobook.
Yes. Use our resources. Absolutely.
Use resources. If you're feeling it that day, read outside.
Yes.
Just be comfortable, cozy. We read at bedtime.
Absolutely.
It's just our way that we calm down here and settle in. So we just spend some time reading at bedtime. Pick a time that works in your schedule.
That's brilliant.
And just have fun.
Yeah. I think for older kids too, you can incorporate, when you start younger, right? So it's like reading's not a punishment that you have to do. It's something that is calming and peaceful, and it gives you your own little creative time and your own, like, book. We have a book nook at home, but as they get older, reading can be, and also we talked about the child should see you reading.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah, and not reading on your phone, because we have
Right.
obviously the screen time, because I read on my phone a lot, but just
Yes.
actually having the physical book and interacting with the pages and just being that they see you read, and then they're going to be inspired to read, just family reading time.
Yeah.
Brilliant. So thank you so much for this wonderful time. If you'd like to learn more about InferCabulary, I'm going to add a link to the bottom. I'm also going to add links to contact Mary Poston, the fabulous Mary Poston. And if you'd like to learn more about Macbeth Academy, we are at www.macbethacademy.org. And join us next Thursday at 7 Eastern for another office hours. We're going to talk about engagement and empowerment for students. So thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Kayla.
Thanks. Bye.
Yes.
So if I'm a mom, I don't know anything about vocabulary teaching. Where do I start?